Hey friends, Ash here with Gents. Today I'm coming at you with the fragrance review of a fragrance that is being talked about on pretty much every fragrance YouTuber channel out there at this point, it seems like. It's this one, Dior Homme 2020. And I have done a first impression on this fragrance already, but I've been giving it wear since that video. That way I could give a better breakdown for you guys. First impressions oftentimes are just kind of snap decisions, what you think of right then and there. And then when you spend more time with the fragrance, you either grow to appreciate it more or grow to dislike it even more. So in this video, I'm going to break this fragrance down for you guys and let you know what I think about it. I'll also show you the presentation really quickly, and we'll talk about the Dior Homme line in general. Which I guess I should have done this to begin with because everybody in their videos is showing all their Dior Homme fragrances, so I want to show you guys some of my Dior Homme fragrances so you know that I've smelled a lot of Dior Homme fragrances. Now that you guys know that I've smelled a lot of Dior Homme, and yeah, I'm just kind of screwing around here and nearly breaking the bottles, let's go ahead and jump into this. Dior Homme O, it took a header, but thankfully these floors are carpeted, so no problem. First off, let's take a quick look at this presentation. So here is the box for the new Dior Homme. You can see there the little B on the front of the box. There's nothing on the top, nothing on the sides. Very small amount of information on the back, and on the bottom your ingredients and your batch code. And here is the new bottle of Dior Homme 2020. Here is a bottle of Dior Homme, the original, what they're now calling Dior Homme Original. There are some differences. You'll notice here in a side-by-side that the original bottle is thicker. So there it is up close, so you can see what I'm talking about. Obviously, a different look from the front as well. This one having Dior Homme right there where you can see it. And then the top different as well. On the bottom, you'll find your batch code etched into the glass. The cap does click into place. On the top of my atomizer is a little CD, which you can see right there. And I bought this at full retail from Ulta, which is a store in my local mall that carries fragrances and beauty products for women. I'll go ahead and waste a spray of this fragrance for you. Like always, a great atomizer from Christian Dior. And one thing to get out of the way right off the top here, I'm sure that a lot of you already know this, but Dior Homme 2020 is not actually a replacement for Dior Homme. So Dior Homme now, the Dior Homme that everybody is accustomed to or used to from the past, is now Dior Homme Original. So it's still out there, not being discontinued, just being renamed from Dior Homme to Dior Homme Original. And then this one is Dior Homme 2020, or I guess just Dior Homme. So it's almost like Dior Homme Original is just being replaced. It's having its name taken away, kind of shuffled off to the side and being given the original tag, but at least it's not going away. At least not yet. Now, let's go ahead and break this fragrance down really quickly. It has very little to do with the original Dior Homme. Really very little to do with the Dior Homme line in general. There's a sweet elemi and pink pepper combo in Dior Homme 2020 that sits underneath a sweet bergamot in the opening when you very first spray this fragrance on. So that bergamot provides a nice sweetness initially. It's not overwhelming, it's not a super strong sweetness, and that sweetness actually stays in the background of Dior Homme 2020 throughout most of the fragrance's lifespan. It has a fresh, spicy kind of tinge to it initially, but the main thing that you pick up very early on is going to be an ISOE Super and Cashmere Wood combo. So that's gonna give it a modern wood kind of vibe. And by modern woods, I mean that fuzzy, almost effervescent, synthetic woody vibe. Dior Homme 2020 has that in spades. The ISOE Super and Cashmere Wood combo stays very prominent through pretty much the entire lifespan of the fragrance. Into the mid, Dior Homme 2020 is very sparkly and fresh. It's got that little bit of sweetness that I talked about still there in the background. Into the mid, Dior Homme 2020 is sparkly, it's fresh, it has that sweetness still in the background that I talked about from the opening. The ISOE Super Comes across like a fuzzy sort of cedar. If you've smelled ISOE Super, you know exactly what I'm talking about. In the first impression video for this fragrance, I actually made mention to Molecule 01, which is ISO Gamma Super, which is, we'll just say ISOE Super to keep things really simple here. But I said that Dior Homme 2020 is almost like Dior took Molecule 01 and remixed it. It's not quite that simplistic. When you actually wear this and you can pay attention to it, it does have a lot more going on than just Molecule 01, but that ISOE Super is unmistakable here. The cashmere wood that I talked about in the opening, that's still here in the mid. Cashmere wood is a synthetic, musky, woody type of note, and I'm not saying synthetic as a derogatory term toward cashmere wood. It's just that cashmere wood is a synthetic aroma chemical. Cashmere wood does not exist in real life. There's not a cashmere tree, so that's what I mean by that. And as well, there is a cedar note in the mid that kind of mixes in with that ISOE Super, but the cedar here to me does not come across like a realistic cedar tree. More than anything, it almost comes off like a little bit of spice, like the way the cedar melts in with the ISOE Super gives it kind of a slight spicy backbone. So in the mid, this is essentially just a warm, fresh, clean, and modern take on woods. It's extremely easy to wear and very versatile, but we'll talk about that more a little bit later on. Into the dry down, things pretty much stay the course from the mid till you're 2-3 hours in. At that point, it starts to change up once you get into the far dry down. At that point, it has a small, slight touch of powder that almost comes off like there's a little hidden bit of iris in here. But it doesn't show up, at least for me, until the far dry down, because up until that point, it's pretty much swallowed up by the cashmere wood, the ISOE Super, the musk, just everything else going on. In the far dry down, you do start to pick out this tiny little tinge of it. To a lot of you out there though, that won't really matter because that's after the fragrance has been on your skin for hours, it's after it's lost most of its projection, but it is there. Also, just to be clear, the iris in here does not come across lipsticky or makeup-y. It doesn't come across like the iris that you'll find in Dior Homme or Dior Homme Intense. It's not that type of iris. It's just a slightly floral, tiny touch of powder in there. You've also got the musk that I talked about just a moment ago in the far dry down, a little bit of vetiver in there as well, and the ISOE Super Cashmere combo that is still there riding it out as the fragrance finishes off your skin. And it does still retain that slight sweetness and that clean feeling into the far dry down. One thing about this scent, Dior Homme 2020, if you're the type of person that has trouble picking up ISOE Super as a note, then you may have a little bit of trouble picking this one up. It's not that you won't smell it, it's just that it might smell very weak coming off your skin when in actuality, it's not. Again, going back to eccentric molecules, Molecule 01, just because it's such an easy comparison to draw. With that fragrance, some people will spray it on and they won't be able to pick it up at all. They'll think there's nothing there. Essentially, they could have sprayed water on their skin for all they know. And then they'll go throughout the day and people will say, oh, you smell great. What are you wearing? And they'll pull compliments, but they still can't smell it. Some people out there have issues picking up ISOE Super, ISO Gamma Super, any molecules in that direct family. And where ISOE Super plays a very prominent part in Dior Homme 2020, if they're not picking up that specific note, then it may come across weak to them. I can actually run into that issue a little bit with this fragrance. If I spray it on and then I repeatedly keep going in and smelling it without giving time for my nose to kind of reset, then I do go nose blind to this one a little bit. But outside of that, I don't have any issues with picking up the ISOE Super. Just throwing that out there in case you are the type of person that has issues picking that note up in general. Now let's talk really quickly about the performance of Dior Homme 2020 off my skin. For me, the longevity is 8+ hours, so I put that firmly above average. In terms of projection, it's more moderate, but this is the type of fragrance that stays moderate for a long time. It's not one of those fragrances that I get maybe 30 minutes of moderate projection or an hour of moderate projection. This fragrance, when I spray it on, 3 hours, 3.5 hours later, it's still projecting out very well, to the point that while I'm moving around, I can still pick up whiffs of it very consistently. In terms of when I would wear this fragrance, it's actually nearly a year-round fragrance. It's not so heavy or cloying that I think that you couldn't wear it in summer. I think that you could pull this off in summer if you wanted to. Again, it's mainly a modern woods type of scent, so it's gonna be very versatile. Easy to wear, easy to pull off, hard to offend people. And it has good enough performance that it would work in cooler weather as well, fall and winter. So this one really is essentially, for me, a year-round fragrance. It does come across more as a daytime type of scent, but you could easily wear it during night as well. And it's also the type of fragrance that I think you could wear casually or formally. And obviously, with all of those things being said, you could wear it to the office as well. When I first smelled this fragrance, my first reaction was disappointment, just extreme disappointment. I did not think that it really lived up to the Dior Homme line fragrances, and it didn't have very much or any of that iris off the top, and that is what Dior Homme is known for. Like I said in the breakdown of the scent, I only really pick up iris, what I perceive to be iris, in the far dry down, and even then, it's not a lipsticky type of iris at all, so it's not what I associate with the Dior Homme line in general. So essentially, as soon as I smelled it, I started to write it off and just thought that it sucked. With the additional wears that I've given this fragrance since then, I've thought about it a lot and I've started to come around a little bit. Now, I think there are still pros and cons here, and I'll talk about those in just a moment, but I don't hate it as much as I did. In regard to the iris being missing here, Dior Homme Cologne 2013 does not have a listed iris note either. And if there's iris in this fragrance, it's not very prominent, and it's something that you pick up further in the dry down. So it's not something that 99% of people out there are even going to notice, assuming it's there. Because some people will tell you, yes, iris is definitely here, but just as many people will say, no, it's absolutely not. What I'm trying to say is, there's already been a fragrance in this Dior Homme line that doesn't really feature iris. And this is something Dior has made a habit of, re-releasing a new version of a fragrance and then just tacking a year on the end of it. Dior Homme, for example, was originally released back in the mid-2000s with a silver stem, and then they re-released it with a black stem. Admittedly, those are much more similar than this new 2020 version is, but it's not like this is a new idea for Christian Dior. All that being said, if this were a replacement for Dior Homme and the original one was just completely going away and being discontinued, I would probably be much more upset than I am right now. But I'm actually viewing this as basically just its own fragrance that has little to nothing to do with this one other than sharing a name. It's almost like a flanker to me. And really what Dior is doing here is essentially taking ISOE Super and making that to Dior Homme as Ambroxan was to Dior Sauvage. Now, I'm not saying that Dior Homme 2020 smells like Dior Sauvage, because it does not, but what they're doing is they're taking ISOE Super, which is an extremely popular aroma chemical in men's fragrances, and making it the focal point of this one, probably to see how well it does in the general market, much in the way they did that with Ambroxan with Dior Sauvage, which was a huge hit. They're just trying to see if maybe lightning will strike twice, this time with ISOE Super. And if it does, I wouldn't be surprised if you see all kinds of designers coming out with ISOE Super heavy fragrances in the next year or two. So the jury is still out on that one, but if this is a huge hit, don't be surprised if you start seeing ISOE Super fragrances everywhere. So with all of this being said, what do I ultimately think about it? It's pleasant, it's easy to wear, it's versatile, it has good performance. All of those things are pros. Lots of people are going to like this fragrance, especially people who are casually into fragrances, people that aren't hardcore into fragrances. Dior essentially is marketing this as a fragrance that almost wears like a second skin, which interestingly is how Molecule 1 is advertised. The type of fragrance that you spray on and it works with your body chemistry. It doesn't project too loudly. It gives off a nice subtle scent cloud that when you're moving around, people are going to smell and pick that up and go, wow, that smells really nice. It's clean. It's a little bit woody. It's modern. It's sophisticated. That's how your average person is going to interpret this fragrance, and honestly, that's what Dior is banking on. That being said, do I think that it's fantastically unique or anything like that? No, not really. That being said, there's not anything that smells directly like it, so that sounds a little bit contradictory. It's heavy on the ISOE Super, which is an aroma chemical I've smelled hundreds of times at this point, and with that being so prominent, it's not really super interesting to me, but I absolutely understand the appeal here. Fragrance though smells of good quality. Everything is blended well here. It doesn't come across smelling cheap at all. You don't smell it and go like, oh, that smells like it should be 20 bucks. It is ultimately a Dior fragrance and it smells like one. Now obviously, the way that Christian Dior is trending with their designer fragrances is to go as mass appealing as possible, to take as few chances as possible. Really seems like that started with Dior Sauvage, and that's the way they've been trending, so it's not a huge surprise to see them go with the heavy ISOE Super here, because it is, again, just so mass appealing. When Dior Homme came out, the original Dior Homme at this point, it was something new. It had the cacao and the iris, that lipsticky, makeup-y iris. It was a men's fragrance that was pushing boundaries. This is pushing no boundaries at all. So yeah, this fragrance has lots of pros and cons. I see both sides of the story here. Lots of guys out there are gonna love this one because of the performance, because of how versatile it is, because of potential compliment factor. But then there are going to be people out there, like I was when I first smelled this, that are let down because of how safe it is. Once upon a time, Christian Dior was trailblazing in terms of designer fragrances. At least that's how it came across to lots of us out there. And that's just not who they are anymore. So I can't sit here and tell you guys that I hate the way that this smells as a fragrance on its own, because I don't. I think it's very safe, but I don't think it smells bad. It's not something where I smell this and I go, oh my God, what is that? That's horrible. It's not that type of scent. It's safe, it's versatile. They're trying to sell as many bottles as humanly possible. I am still, at the end of the day though, let down that this is what it is. Christian Dior Homme is a classic. I love the fragrance. I love Dior Homme Intense, Dior Homme Parfum. I love almost everything in the line. Dior Homme 2020 may occasionally get some wear from me, absolutely, much in the same way Dior Sauvage does. There are times where you want to wear something that's just easy to pull off, that you don't have to think about. That's what Dior Homme 2020 is. So if you hate Dior Homme 2020 for what it is and for what it stands for with the way that Christian Dior is going with their men's fragrances, I understand, and I'm not gonna argue with you at all because I'm disappointed too. But if you love Dior Homme 2020 because of the simplicity, the simple fact that you can spray that on and go anywhere and do anything and people are gonna like it, I get that too. And at least it's not super expensive designer-wise, like Dior Sauvage Parfum, which was $150 retail for a 100 ml bottle. This one was $95, so roughly 66% the price that Sauvage Parfum is. So at least it's not that expensive, comparatively speaking. I did also see in the advertising for Dior Homme 2020 that they had Dior Homme Intense bottles that have this new style as well, where it says Dior Homme Intense right here, where this one says Dior Homme. So it would not surprise me at all if we see a new Dior Homme Intense 2020 in the very, very near future, since they're already featuring those new bottle styles in advertising photos. All right guys, this video is extremely long, but there was a lot to cover here because of what this means for Christian Dior in general going forward, or at least what they're putting across as their modus operandi. Did I say that correctly? What they're trying to pull off is what I mean. As always guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Thanks for all your support. I'll see you guys again tomorrow with another fragrance video. See you guys. So guys, this is being filmed a number of days after I filmed the review of Dior Homme 2020. I'm not wearing a fragrance right now, so let's go ahead and spray this back on. I'm just playing, it's not that bad. But something has come to my attention that I need to talk about in this video. So when I filmed the review on Dior Homme 2020, I was under the impression that Dior Homme Original was still going to be for sale at the same time as Dior Homme 2020 in America, that you could pick up whichever one you wanted. So I kind of approached this as a flanker, you know, something that was coming out, but not taking the place of the original Dior Homme. Now, what I said in the review about Dior Homme 2020 still stands. It's still a pleasant, modern, woody, synthetic type of scent. It's versatile. A lot of people are going to like it, but it doesn't take any chances. And a lot of people out there are going to find it boring, and a lot of people are going to be even offended that this is in the Dior Homme line that included such fragrances as the original Dior Homme, Dior Homme Intense, Dior Homme Parfum, and on and on. Given more time and more wares with this fragrance since the review, everything I said still stands. Versatile, people-pleasing, pleasant, but at the same time, boring and not really something that blows me away at all. Now, the reason I'm shooting this right now, apparently this in North America actually is taking the place of Dior Homme. So Dior Homme as we know it, that's going to be becoming Dior Homme Original. What I'm hearing right now is that it's not going to be for sale in North America. It will be for sale in Europe, I'm told, but not North America. And the first person that actually brought this to my attention, Serapio Silva. And I actually looked into it a little bit more on my own after being told this. And yeah, that actually does look like the case, that this is going to be the only Dior Homme in North America. Now you could potentially still order Dior Homme Original from Europe, but that changes how I view this a bit. I did some spot checking. If you go to Sephora, Ulta, Macy's, Belk, Neiman Marcus, Bloomingdale's, any of those websites, and you type in Dior Homme, guess what? You're not going to find Dior Homme. At most of those, you'll find Dior Homme Sport and Dior Homme Cologne, and that's it. And at some of them, you can find Dior Homme Eau as well. But as far as Dior Homme as we know it, gone. If you go to Christian Dior's United States website, Dior Homme as we know it, gone. Replaced by Dior Homme 2020. So what does that tell me? It tells me that this is your Dior Homme now if you live in the United States or Canada. And guess what else? Dior Homme Intense, that is missing from every single one of those websites too, including Christian Dior's US website. And I have seen photos of Dior Homme Intense in this new bottle style. Right up here it says Dior Homme Intense. And that leads me to believe, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not, that Dior Homme Intense is going to be re-released as a reformulated new edition very soon, and the Dior Homme Intense that everybody has loved for so many years, going away, at least as far as the United States is concerned. Obviously, I don't have any further information on that at this point, just the fact that you can't find Dior Homme Intense at any of those websites that sells Dior at retail. You can't find it on Dior's US website, and I've seen photos floating around of the new Dior Homme Intense bottles that look like this. So, suffice this all to say that when I reviewed this, when I shot the review earlier that you've been checking out, it was under the impression that Dior Homme 2020 was essentially just a flanker, and that the original Dior Homme was still going to be out there and still going to be easy to find in the US and Canada if you wanted to. So I maybe gave this one a little more slack, with that being my thought process, that this is just essentially a flanker. But now that it appears this is in fact taking the place of Dior Homme, and it wouldn't surprise me if Dior Homme Original just gets faded out and discontinued, I'm much more disappointed than when I originally filmed the review. Like I said, everything I said before in the review that I've already filmed, I still stand by that, but at the same time, my disappointment is much higher, and my annoyance at Christian Dior is much higher as well. I'm going to talk about this just very briefly, but I filmed a video with Manny from Cascade Scents when I was up in Montreal, and one of the questions he asked me at the time was, what is an overrated fragrance house in your opinion as of right now? And my answer was Christian Dior. The reason I said Christian Dior is because they're no longer taking any chances. They're just kind of piggybacking off of the success that they had with Sauvage, with releasing even more Sauvage, and they're not doing anything groundbreaking anymore, whereas in the past, they were kind of at the forefront of being a groundbreaking designer house. I mean, the Dior private line, who cares about it at this point? Most of the releases there are completely forgettable, the new releases that they have coming out. And now they're hitting us with this, which is essentially their take on ISO-E Super, the same way Sauvage was their take on Ambroxan. So I still stand by that with Christian Dior being overrated at the moment, and if anything, it seems like Christian Dior is just being a cash grab house. We'll see how this plays out though. Dior Homme 2020. Just wanted to shoot this to let you guys know that bit of information right there. And if Dior Homme Original does end up discontinued and this is the replacement, then we've got a really good idea of where Dior is going in the future, which is mass appealing, people pleasing, versatile, and taking absolutely no chances whatsoever.